All right, we are going to start in the next few seconds, if that's all right. We still have a couple of speakers who are going to come in and join us in a moment, but I'd like to open up this session, this workshop this afternoon. It's on opposing institutional racism in our workplaces and communities. And we have lined up for you 6 speakers, a couple of who are going to be online, but we do have another 4 speakers who will be speaking from the room. My name is Julie Mukherjee. I'm in the NEU, I'm a teacher. I'm a union rep as well at my workplace, and I'm sure you will all know, if you haven't missed the news, that, you know, us teachers were on strike on Wednesday along with civil servants and so on. It was one of the most brilliant days I've had for a really, really long time. That probably says how sad my life is, but anyway, it really was amazing. But also, I also happen to be a teacher in the same borough that the disgraceful event of Child Q took place. So obviously that's been a really big issue in Hackney and of course across the country as well. So I know that that's going to be part of the discussion here today. And it is about the nature of the police and whether they belong in our schools and so on. So, you know, absolutely open to that kind of discussion. I'm going to open up the meeting now. Like I said, we've got 6 absolutely brilliant speakers this afternoon. We'll have the speakers speak first for about 6 minutes each. I'll then open up the workshop to any questions and discussions and so on, and then I'll bring some of the speakers back to summarise at the end. So that will be the format of the meeting. We're going to start with Daniel Kebede, who I have chaired alongside a few times now. He is from the National Education Union. He is also standing for General Secretary, which is absolutely wonderful news. I hope. Online. Okay, fantastic. All right, so I'm going to, without any further delay, I'm going to ask Daniel to speak.
Oh, thank you very much, Julie, and it's great to be with you, albeit virtually. And what an important event today is. I am actually going to start just by talking a bit about Child Q, because it really highlights a real problem that is ever growing in our schools. It was a toxic mix of arrogance, indifference and hostility, and this is passing into the bloodstream of education and is having some dire consequences. You know, on school premises, a 15-year-old girl strip searched by police officers. She was alone, she wasn't counselled, she wasn't supported, she was just told to get dressed and go back to school. But what happened to Child Q, it doesn't start with a strip search. It starts with zero tolerance behaviour policies, a system of education that disproportionately excludes Black children, the absence of a democratic accountability in our academised school system, its remoteness from the community, and underlying all this, a sense of that issues of race are dangerous and difficult, and to respond to them fully and critically may get a school or a member of staff into trouble. Now, in different forms, this issue does keep returning in education, in Prevents, in the Trojan horse scandal, in Windrush. It's a repeated pattern of suspicion and persecution. And as Julie said, Child Q highlights an issue with a growing trend in which police are ever present in our schools. It's a trend that is leading to the increased criminalisation of our children. Now, there are people who say that I'm wrong about this and that police can provide a pastoral role, but I don't think that is right. They degraded, abused and humiliated Child Q. Now, I'm a teacher and I've spent much of my career working with young people who have been excluded from mainstream education. I've worked with young people whose first contact with a youth worker is following police arrest, and it's the wrong way round in my view. We need to start with the youth workers in school. We need to start with the counsellors in school and start with all the services that have been cut to the bone by this government and let children have access to those in school. Now, we know that racism and misogyny underpinned what happened to Child Q, and none of us need an inquiry to tell us that, but it is on all of us, whether you're in education or just members of the community, to ensure that nothing like Child Q happens again. 5 children a day in the last 3 years were strip searched by the Metropolitan Police, and the overwhelming majority of them were Black. Now, I also want to focus on a few other things in regards to education and fighting institutional racism, because child Q is like the epitome of the worst that can happen. But the reality is, every day our young people are accessing a curriculum that is Eurocentric, where their histories, their cultures, where their backgrounds are just not celebrated. So we really do also have a huge task to deliver a decolonized education system in which every child sees them reflected, because it is an incredibly alienating environment, not just for black children but white children also. At the moment, this Eurocentric view of education, we need to ensure that our histories are embedded everywhere. But I also just want to focus on the strikes, because these have been huge. Now, I absolutely view these strikes that are happening at the moment as a fight for the very heart of education. We have been awarded a 5% pay award that has got to come from existing school budgets, and that means at the moment there are going to be further cuts in education, and we know who are going to bear the brunt of those cuts. It will be children with SEND, children with additional needs. It will be black members of staff, as there are restructures that will have to emerge so schools can cut savings. And we know already that if you're a black educator, you're more likely to be held back in career progression, more likely to be restructured out, more likely to be at the receiving end of capability. So I'm just going to close now by appealing to everybody in this room. Please stand by your teachers and support staff who refuse to cross picket lines. Stand with our dispute, because we know that it will be black people who will suffer the bare brunt of this government's brutality. So please keep fighting, everyone, and let's build a movement, an education system that is free from racism.
Daniel, thank you. Okay, that was absolutely perfectly put, and absolutely and completely agree. Okay, we have our next speaker. I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Kaba, who is Chris Kaba's father. Chris Kaba was shot dead by the police last September, and Mr. Kaba is here to speak to you. You have about 6 minutes.
Thank you very much to speak to you about my son. Chris Kaba was a lovely boy, strong man, black told. He was killed on the 5th September just because he was black, sitting in the car and armed. They boxed him, not even ask his name. And just someone come, a policeman shoot a bullet on his head. And the only remember I can have from Chris, a bullet kill him. This kind of the racism must be stopped. And always I say, Chris should be the last one. If we don't fight today for Chris, there is other Chris outside there. It could be me, it could be you. It could be your son, it could be anyone. And afterwards, who will come to tell you that your son is died? It's only the killer. The police who killed my son, and they send the police to come to tell me that my son is killed. By who? By the police. Which trauma for the family. What do you think about human being? We got feeling. Can we have sense to talk to them? Even by social service, as you are the killer. And on that thing, we think that is structural and system in our country to cover the police. If the killer wasn't the police, he should be in prison now. Because it's the police, they try to cover, to say that the investigation will take 6 months, 9 months, what it shouldn't, as you know, who is the killer. The suspect is there. Why do you like to change things to make the victim as a suspect. And you and I, we are here to fight for this kind of a situation, racism. Racism shouldn't be in this country and in this century. As we are living, if I see the room like a rainbow, mixed color. And is it what we want? Like Kant and Descartes in France, they say that it's kind of the evil situation, what could be eradicated by education. Because the racist in his mind, he thinks that is a superior than other people. And he can do what he wants to him because he doesn't consider this person as a human being, maybe lower than that. I'm telling you, if Chris was knitted black, he will be with us today. But for the moment, the killer is enjoying his life with his family when Chris is in the grave. I leave to Jefferson, maybe that's something to complete. Thank you very much.
I think Jefferson wants to say a few words.
No, thank you, Uncle. I think that was very passionate. I think that was very emotional. And I think the emotion and the trauma is conveyed through every word that Uncle speaks. The people see us at events like this, or they'll see us on the media. But to the day-to-day, the reality, the pain that is inflicted on the family, most people will never experience that. And God forbid anyone experiences that, because one is unbelievably draining. It takes a toll on your mental health. It takes a toll on your self-perception, on your outlook of the world, and all this because the IOPC are procrastinating. They have a habit of procrastinating. Not just in this case. So many cases. If you look at the case of Sean Riggs, who was killed in Brixton. If you look at the case of Giselle Rodney, if you look at the case of Jermaine Baker, and the list is endless. And what they do is they try to isolate this issue so we don't see the larger picture. They don't want us to see the pattern. They don't want us to see the context. They want us to look at Chris with our understanding that this is systemic, this is institutional, and this is something that needs to be changed on a fundamental and on a structural level. This honestly cannot go on, because all lives are equal. All lives matter. Every single life, black, white, it doesn't matter. Every single life matters. But it seems like in this country, there's this reoccurring theme, there's this reoccurring idea that black lives don't matter, and we just have to put up with it. And I'm saying that this case is really, really, really important, because I don't know if many people know, but no police officer, 7 police officer has been convicted of murder for killing someone in the line of duty. It's never happened. The closest we've got is manslaughter. And I think that was last year or the year before. But we haven't got murder yet. And police officers are killing people because they know, I think they are fully aware they will not be held accountable. One of the police officers that actually was involved in the killing of Sean Riggs, he changed his life, he became a priest, but he actually said that he wants to be held accountable for what he did. Like, he's a police officer and he's saying it himself. So clearly even police officers can see that they do get unfair treatment. So please, if you can stand behind the campaign, and I know right now there's investigation going on, there's not much you can do, but even if you can spread awareness, if you can talk to people, if you can contact your local MP, we've got an Instagram and a website. So our Instagram is Justice for Chris Kaba, and our email is help@justiceforchriskaba.org. We've got leaflets, so if anyone wants this, I'll hand this out straight afterwards. But honestly, I pray that we get justice, because once again, justice won't just be a win for us as a family, it will be a win for England and for the UK as a nation. Thank you.
Maybe Jefferson, if you want to give me some of the leaflets, and perhaps we can keep them at the front here, so if people want to, obviously you can give them out later too, but maybe we can keep a few here as well. Brilliant, thank you. That's brilliant. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. I'd like to introduce the next speaker. Again, you have chaired a couple of times now. This is This is Juliana Ojinnaka. Juliana is the Black member of the Standing Committee of the UCU. And Juliana,
Okay, thank
give
you
about
very
6
much.
minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
you.
I'm really sorry to hear of your loss, and my heart goes out to your family. It's really hard to follow on after your speech. Okay, so but I'm going to try. Okay, so my name is Juliana Ojinnaka, and I'm the chair for the Black Member Standing Committee of UCU. And I'd like to just to send solidarity to all our members and all the other workers who are on strike at the present moment. And I'm bigging up the RMT, the nurses, the NEU, the PCS, the lawyers. Ofsted as well is going to be going on strike. Those of you who are in education, would you believe that? You know, and of course, and I've also been on strike for the past few days in the last couple of weeks. Our college is taking a strike after a decade of not striking, so things must be really bad. Okay, so and we would welcome your support. We're striking again on the 7th and the 9th of February. So messages to our college, the Sheffield College in South Yorkshire. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so in terms of the workplace racism, according to the recent UN Special Experts recent interim report, they claim that from their report that the UK is falling behind in dealing with systemic racism against Black people. And this is reality. We all know that Black workers are to be found in low-paid work. They're usually casualized, do precarious contracts, 0-hour contracts, face stresses and so on, mental and physical ill health. Their life is bedeviled with insecurity because of lack of resources. They can't plan for the future because of the casualization of their labor and so on. And in a lot of cases, we know that issues of race, gender, disability, their sexuality works in a very negative way to undermine our lives in a very specific way and makes Black workers more vulnerable to the cost of living crisis. So, and Black women are the ones who bear the brunt of this in a lot of families as well. Okay, so they're the ones who face a lot of low paid work in their workplace. Black members face indirect discrimination in the workplaces. Some are treated differently because they have a degree from a different continent. And so there's an assumption that they can't cope with their work and are treated really badly by their management and so on. Institutions are often failing to put in place equality impact assessment to assess the level of racism within their institutions. This is something that needs to change. And a lot of institutions have large numbers of Black members who are being disciplined on a regular basis. And I'm talking about education here, but it's the same thing for other areas, as we heard this morning when the presenter from the Fire Brigade Union presented this morning, and also from the sister who also presented. And of course, a lot of those who carry out the disciplinary in our workplace are white. And this is where the divisiveness of this whole institutions come about, okay? And of course, in education, those who are in support plan are Black lecturers. And I'm talking from experience of working in a college that has had that going on for a number of times, which is why I'm very much involved in the strike action. If we look at in terms of observation, because we have a regular observation, most likely to be observed are the Black members of staff, you know, and there's an endless cycle of observation because the observer will find one thing or the other wrong and so on. And some of it is also subjective as well. Okay, so you can imagine the level of stress a lot of Black workers are under on an ongoing basis. Okay, so there's always performance management discussions and so on amongst management to weed out Black lecturers in their workplace. And of course, sometimes a lot of the data is not shared, it's not transparent as well with members as well. Okay, it's never a level playing field, and this is something that is an ongoing basis. Okay, so when the COVID happened, we know that there was a lot of Black people who died as a result of the COVID crisis, especially because they're supposed to be the key workers. And we've forgotten that. We said that they were the key workers. Now that the supposedly COVID is out of the way, we no longer brand Black workers as key workers. But there was no assessment being carried out on a regular basis to assess the level of COVID that they're under. And in most cases, when Black workers want to work from home, they're never allowed to do so compared to their white colleagues. So this is, again, very divisive. And if we look at equality and diversity and inclusion policies, a lot of institutions do not prioritize this, especially when it comes to race. They will deal with sexuality and they will deal with gender and to some extent disability, but race is always something that's always masked in a very big way and so on. And of course, the purpose for which EDI was set up is never used for that end. And especially when it comes to race, and it's always top down and never bottom up. And sometimes students are seen as the consumers in a way that is detrimental to Black lecturers, especially in times of course evaluation. So there's all, that's something that institutions have now decided to take out of their the whole criteria of evaluating lecturers and so on. A lot of the EDI programs are lip service. They're not really fit for purpose. And in most cases, it can be used to divide and rule Black workers. So, and of course, when we come to cost of living situation, we find that the widening of ethnicity pay gap because of the cost of living standards, because obviously a lot of these things are already in place before the crisis that we're faced with coming to being. A lot of the casualized members, as I mentioned before, are Black workers. And of course, all of this has huge impact on our mental health and causes a lot of stress. And especially as Black workers try to navigate their way through the system and try to work through the whole institutional racism and stereotyping that follows everything that they do. And again, Black workers are also not supported. So this tend to exacerbate their mental health issue. They lack promotion in a lot of cases, not given credit for the work that they've done. And this is always ongoing, especially in research areas and so on. And a lot of their ideas are approached by the white colleagues as well. And I hate to say it because this is where the divide and rule comes into our work, but it's the reality that we're faced with. So what are the solutions? Black workers know that all of this is going on. Okay, 1 minute, okay. It's going on a regular basis. So how do we get around it? And some of them are really fed up of the usual lip service that's paid to all of these things. So one of the things that we're saying is that we need a mandatory reporting of ethnicity pay gap. That has to be a must, and governments have to really make sure that this happens on a regular basis. There has to be a place whereby Black members are mentored so that they can apply for a higher paying jobs, so that they're not based at the low levels. And unions as well, we have to take a lot of responsibility for this, and we have to ensure that Black members are represented at the negotiating table and not just, pay lip service, or we've got a rep here and we've got a rep there and so on, but they don't have any power. So unions have to make sure that they take on board this anti-racism framework that's been put forward by the TUC by campaigning on the points that have been raised in the union, in the institution, and outside of that whole setup. And also making sure that we pay Black workers a living wage. All workers, in fact, especially marginalized groups and so on, so that they can be able to meet up with the cost of living crisis. And also then we can deal with the ethnicity pay gap. And also we need to provide a safe place for Black workers. I'm also the chair for the Yorkshire and Humber UCU group. And one of the things that's come out quite loud and clear with the Black members as well is that they don't feel safe going to the unions to discuss their issue. And therefore, there has to be a safe provision that the union can also inculcate in their operation to ensure that Black members' needs are met. Okay, and also that it doesn't just become, let's just keep them in that corner, Black members and so on, and then there's no action taken on whatever issues that they've raised. So we need to make sure that we incorporate whatever it is that Black members are raising as their concerns into the main structure of the union and actually take it forward actively. And of course, if this doesn't work, we also need to make sure that Black members have people that they can go to person to discuss issues of concern to them. And lastly, I just wanted to follow on from what Chris has mentioned, the decolonization of the curriculum. This has to be a must. And we have to take a lift out of the Welsh education authority or board who have actually instituted Black history in their curriculum. So I'll end it there, and then if there's any questions, I'll take it. Thank you very much, Julie.
Thank you, Juliana. Thank you. Okay, that's great. Thank you very, very much. I'm going to ask the rest of the speakers if you could just try and stick to time, because I know that obviously we want some time for. No, it's not just you. It's not at all just you at all. I'd like to introduce Lawrence Davies. Lawrence Davies is from the law firm Equal Justice, and he's also the Equalities Officer for Unite. He's also representing the Belly Mujinga case from COVID, if people remember that. Anyway, so Lawrence.
Thank you. It's a bit strange to speak to so many people having lived through COVID and not seen more than 2 people for about 10 years, so I'm a bit freaked out. Right, so is Britain institutionally racist? What do you think? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, so the answer is it depends on who you ask. Okay, so the UN report investigating the position of Black African people in Britain very recently found that Britain was institutionally racist, systemically and structurally racist. Remember? A couple of weeks ago. Kemi Badenoch for government said, no, the report is superficial, it's not based on facts. So yes, it is. No, it's not. Okay. In 2020, a friend of mine, BBC Black journalist, found that there was a disproportionality in COVID outcomes for the Black community, and she published that report, and the government started something called CRED, or the Commission for Race and Ethnic Minority Disparities, and they produced that report, which said that Britain was not institutionally racist. Remember? And then Doreen Lawrence pushed back against that and said, hang on, we've got a legacy of racism in this country, and it's still in the fabric of our society today. So yes, it is. No, it's not. And then, of course, you always see the black figure at the front of the government saying we're not racist. We're not institutionally racist. It's the deployment, isn't it? So one of the figures in the CRED report was a Black academic professor. Did he have anything to do with that report? No, he didn't. So again, the same journalist brought that to our attention. That academic had absolutely nothing to do with that report. So why are you putting a black face in that report? Again, same reason. Kemi Badenoch then went to the Daily Mail and attacked that journalist for not being impartial, which could potentially threaten her career, because BBC have to be impartial. So it's a pantomime in a way. Yes, you are institutionally racist. No, you're not. Yes, you are. No, you're not. Okay, so that's what's going on. But behind that, there's the culture wars, of course. So politically, in the United States, Black Lives Matter movement made a difference because it increased Democrat votes. It led, this government believes, in this country, to the Democrats winning the last election. So that absolutely determined that Black Lives Matter never gets that energy is never translated to a society tipping point in which politically we can change. Okay, so they're systematically pushing back against it. It's not random, it's absolutely systematic pushback. And you see it in Chris's case, you see it in every race case that we're fighting at the moment, even in the judiciary pushing back against activist lawyers on Rwanda, yeah, which was absolutely a racist policy. You have the Home Office. They devised the hostile environment, yeah, to attack immigrants in this country if they didn't have their paperwork in order. The courts eventually found that to be racist. Amber Rudd had to resign. Permanent Secretary transferred to the British Transport Police, who placed for him to go again. Yeah, but they couldn't express that racism in that way, so they stuck it into illegal immigrants. We went from immigrants to illegal immigrants, and now we have a very hostile environment. Yeah, what's the worst country in the world we can send asylum seekers to? Rwanda, not great on human rights, I have to say. They also looked at the Falklands. They had a shopping list. Okay, I can give you the allegedly, rumored. So I'll give you some countries' names: Afghanistan, Russia, Iran, Iraq. Okay, 2 of those are on the list. Yeah, to give money to deport illegal immigrants, allegedly. Okay, it's not coincidence, purposeful. It's to make us feel the most unattractive country in the world to other races. So if you want to know anything about equality, you have to start with the Birmingham City Council case. The Birmingham City Council, 11,000 women sued for equal pay. They're cooks, cleaners, and carers. How much did those women get as an award? Have a guess. They got 1,200 million, 1.2 billion, okay? And the Birmingham City Council gender pay reporting had women getting more pay than men. But the reality was that those women were owed 1,200 million pounds in illegal equal pay debt. Birmingham City Council had to sell off all of its property, including the National Exhibition Centre. They had to borrow 300 million pounds from the government to avoid going bankrupt. Okay? What's the ethnicity pay difference? We know for women it's 18%. On ethnicity, what is it? Do you know? There's virtually no research. Search we know at the moment is either between 26% and 39%. Because most black workers are working in the low wage economy. Okay? Well, there's a disproportionality there. And no one wants to tackle the low wage economy. So Theresa May, as Prime Minister, said, women get paid 18% less than men. That's a bad thing. We need to tackle equal pay. We're introducing gender pay reporting. Black people get a terrible service in the criminal justice system. Yeah? We need to do something about that. What she didn't say is black people don't get equal pay. What she didn't say is the total equal pay debt owed to black workers today is 300 billion pounds. To women, it's 1 trillion pounds. Oh. Yeah. If you transfer 300 billion pounds into black workers and black-led businesses, you will have the first step towards race equality. What did the government do after the Birmingham City Council case? They abolished equal pay questionnaires. They made it impossible for anyone ever to prove equal pay ever again. Okay, that's what they did. So gender pay reporting, remember always, Birmingham paid out 1,200 million, even though the gender pay reporting said, factually, women were paid more. So anyone arguing for ethnicity pay reporting, it doesn't work. It's cosmetic. As a lawyer, I can't do anything. If I know I'm representing a black worker, who I guess is being paid less, I can't prove it. If that company pays black workers 26% less according to ethnicity pay reporting, I can't go to court on that because I need the comparators evidence. I can't do it on the social science. Okay. I've only got 1 minute. I'm nowhere near. Okay. I have to skip all of that. What I want you to know, have a look at the British survey of attitudes. 25% of people in Britain identify themselves as a little or very racist. They've been doing so since the 1970s. It spiked after 9/11. It spiked after the 2012 Olympics. It spiked after Brexit. Okay. It spiked after the Olympics because everyone was saying we took diversity too far. We're too nice. Okay. Spiked after Brexit because we had an anti-foreigner narrative. So in the workplace, racial harassment went up from 2016, it was at 16%, 2020, it's 31%. It doubled in 4 years. So it doesn't matter whether we're institutionally racist or not from a lawyer's point of view, because institutional racism isn't illegal. I can't sue anyone for that, because when they did a Stephen Lawrence report, they mistakenly didn't put institutional racism into the Race Relations Amendment Act, so it never got into the Equality Act. So the right wing are making us have a debate about, are you institutionally racist? Are you not? Yes, you are. No, you're not. The pantomime stuff. It doesn't matter. A race victim isn't helped in any way by Britain being labelled institutionally racist or not being labelled institutionally racist. You can't bring a legal claim on that. You can't get justice on that. You can't get compensation on that. It's a false narrative. What we need to do is abolish the Equality Act and introduce an Inequality Act. And in the Inequality Act, institutional racism would be unlawful. You could sue for it. And then you should get punitive damages, as in the States, because the average award for race discrimination at the moment is how much? £12,000. How much was it in 1976 when we introduced an illegal cap on discrimination awards? £11,000. That was illegal. It's gone up £1,000 in 46 years. And they wonder why. So, last stat, 30% of black people at work will experience racism, okay? It's a fact, it's just there. Only 1% of the 30% ever formally complain about it. Okay? Because there's no access to justice, you have an unenforceable right. You can't bring that case. People are too scared of retaliation, the awards are too low, the costs are too high. So in any piece of legislation in which 99% of the victims don't exercise their rights, that legislation is not fit for purpose. It also means that 99% of the perpetrators of racism are never disciplined, never challenged, be it in the police, be it in any other organisation in this country, yeah? And why do you think the workplaces haven't changed? Because 99% of incidents of racism are not challenged. And statistically, I'll leave you with this. It's more likely if you win your case at the tribunal and only 32% of the 1% who sue win, it's more likely that the perpetrator is promoted and dismissed. And until we change that, we're not going to change anything.
Sometimes forget how shocking some of the stats and figures are really, so that's interesting, thank you. Okay, our next speaker will be online, and this is a case that's been going on now for like over 25 years. I'd like to introduce, is Sukhdev ready? Brilliant. I'd like to introduce Sukhdev Reel, whose son, Ricky Reel, was killed in 1997 after a racist attack. But, you know, it's been over 25 years calling for justice for what happened to Ricky Reel. But I'll introduce you now. Hello, Sukhdev.
Hello, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Welcome.
Thank you for inviting me to speak about Ricky's case. But first of all, my solidarity to Chris Kaba's family. I'm there. In any way I can help you, please contact me. And I know how you feel. 25 years ago, exactly the more or less similar thing happened to me. My son went out with 3 Asian friends, and on the way to a nightclub, they were attacked by 2 white men, and we reported it to the police. The first police officer said, no, we have to wait for 24 hours. If he doesn't come home, report it again. Then we went to Kingston police station with the victims of the racist attack. The police turned around and said, well, you know, your son may not want to come home. Maybe your son's run away because he's gay. Or maybe your son has, maybe your family was trying to arrange a marriage as you Asian people do and try to run away. So this is the story that started with the police not believing the victims, not believing the parents. And this continued for the last 25 years. 7 days later, his body was found in the river. The police at the site of the recovery told us that because his fly buttons were undone, he went to the river to urinate, fell in and drowned. And then when we made a complaint, they said, well, we never said that. They continued to, continued to say that they were searching, but it was the family and the friends who were searching for Ricky. We found CCTV cameras, we found other witnesses and everything. And during the inquest, we found out that they had lost the evidence that were handed over to the police. They confirmed that during the inquest, and to punish us because we would not stop questioning them. The investigating officer took an early retirement because he was admonished, and before any legal action could be taken against him, he decided to take an early retirement. And to punish us, he took photographs of Ricky taken at the post-mortem. Some of the photographs were really awful. I haven't seen them, but I've been told about it. And he took the photographs to a Daily Mail reporter and said, could you please publish these photographs in your newspaper? You can imagine our distress. And we informed the police. The police's response was, he's retired. The reporter doesn't want to come forward. And they went to their house. I went to this police officer's house, found the photographs. There was evidence there that he had stolen the photographs, but decided to walk away. All the investigation that was carried out was, you are an Asian woman. Why are you questioning us? More or less, go away. And I am still here questioning them and will continue to do that. And punishment, I discovered in 2014 that I'm also one of the co-participants of the undercover police inquiry. And I'm the first person to have met Sir John Mitting, who is the judge of the undercover police inquiry, and been given reports. And some of them are really scary reports as to what they were doing to me. But I'm not allowed to say anything about it. I have a petition. We have a petition on Change.org. There are 2 petitions. Please sign them. And please support my MP, John McDonnell, because he's doing quite a lot for us. He brings up Ricky's case in the House of Parliament every month. Trade unions and big organizations always have meetings where they discuss race issues, but nothing comes out of it. they need to support people like us. You know, we can sit here and talk about racism. We can talk about how we are going to deal with it. We can talk about how we are going to support you, but we need real support from you. Meetings and meetings and meetings we attend, but it's nothing forthcoming from the unions.
So if we can't hear you, if you can just bear with me. Should we try again?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I think my hand must have touched it. Right. We have an online meeting organized by Haldane Society of Lawyers on 9th of February at 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. And there's a link for Eventbrite. Please join this meeting. And Mr. Mike Mansfield is going to be on that meeting. And we have a meeting in Leicester on the 26th of February and another one on the 5th of March. What we are saying is, that families like us feel very isolated when no support is offered to us. We have been, to all the meetings and everything. And in fact, on the 11th of January this year, we met with the police commissioner and we asked him to reopen the case. The case was closed as, the case wasn't closed. It's still open. And so we met him and we said we need a fresh investigation, not an investigation that was carried out last time, but a new fresh investigation, and that the new forensic team need to be there to examine everything that was disregarded first. And he said to us that he will make a public announcement soon, but so far we haven't heard anything from him. So if we don't hear anything by next week, we will be issuing a press statement. So all I'm saying to you is, to other people is, don't suffer in silence. If you have suffered any failings, any attacks like us or anything at all, please stand up and demand justice. People like us are always ignored. No value is placed on Black lives. Black lives need to matter as well. We are people. We demand justice. Justice should be given to us. It's not something that just you're Black, you have to beg for it. Why should we beg for justice? My son deserves justice. He was attacked by white men who have never been found. There are photographs in the alley of two men standing there at the same time Ricky was attacked. We were told by the police officers that they can't be enhanced. So we asked the police commissioner, after 25 years, there are technologies that are, much more efficient than they were 25 years ago. Enhance the photographs, bring those people out. So what I'm saying to everyone here today is, I know time has passed, but if they know anything, what happened to Ricky 25 years ago, please come forward. We need justice. We need peace. We can't go on like this. I have published a book, which is on sale, I think, today at the Bookmarks bookstore. It's called Ricky Reel, Silence is Not an Option. We have never been silent. We have been vocal for the last 25 years. There is a place I haven't been to and spoken about Ricky's case. Yes, there is a lot of solidarity and sympathy. Solidarity and sympathy will not get me justice. Please help to find us justice for Ricky. Thank you. And hi, Lawrence. Thank you.
Sukhdev, thank you so much. I just suddenly kind of remembered, earlier this week, I was speaking to one of my students in a sixth form college, and actually, she kind of said, Miss, the first time she'd really realised what racism means. Actually, it's just like come back to me. She said that her first cousin, whose family moved to Wales a few years ago, her first cousin was killed a couple of years ago in a drowning by 3 white boys. He was 14. The case was taken to court, and the boys were, they were not charged with anything. It was just misadventure or something like that. Absolutely shocking. And, the fact that this student, whose cousin was 14, was about to turn 16 literally in the next few days, it's just heartbreaking. Just can't believe the absolute scandal when the court case took place. It was just unbelievable. This will live with her forever. And if that's your experience as a young Black woman, to know what racism feels like because of your family, something absolutely disastrous. So, we have families here who have gone through so much. And absolutely solidarity, but indeed, you know, more needs to be done. It's the fight for that justice, isn't it? So, okay, I'd like to introduce the last speaker for this session for the moment before I open it up to discussion. Weyman, you do have 6 minutes. I was also going to say, do you perhaps want to come and sit over here? Because, I mean, you're quite loud, aren't you? But yeah, go on. We'll see if this mic can.
If you can't hear me, then
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Sorry, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But also,
Thank
sorry, I
you.
was also going to say, people are sitting outside. Do you want to take this opportunity to come inside maybe and just try and sit on the floor, or if you want to come inside, you are more than welcome. Let's just get that.
Can I start off by thanking all the speakers for their contribution today, because it tells us about the state of institutional racism in Britain. But I want to start off by saying that we have to make sure that there's actually a change of that. Sorry, do you want to move?
No, this one. Right.
So where do you want to stand? Sorry.
Move the chair.
Right.
Move the chair on.
Yeah.
And then just stand where the chair is.
Yeah, just stand
And
here.
we'll be able to see you. Brilliant. Okay.
Yeah, okay. We have to make sure that the demands that we make, that there's real change. And the reason why I say that is because all of us sit here and hear the figures and hear what's happened and hear the frustration. And I want to argue something. I want to argue that we have to connect our power to our argument for real change. And there's been a breakdown in this. I joined when I was part of the Steve Lawrence campaign. And I remember when Neville Lawrence went to the TUC and we combined class power with community power, they had no choice but to listen to what we said, because we did it in that way. And I think we have to do that again. And I say one of the reasons why I say that is that I agree that when we did the 1919 inquiry, whatever it is, we put the things in there, they never implemented them. But that's where change comes from. I learned this from when I was a secretary at City and Islington College. We did a staff survey and we found out that women were being paid less than men and that black people were being paid less than white people. And when you went to the principal, who was quite a lefty or whatever it is, and showed him the figures, he said, "This is shocking." Now, the problem is, it's not shocking because they knew about it, but the union then said, we're going to hold a ballot and we're going to connect the question about what's happening with racism to the question of our class power. We'll shut the college down. You don't pay us, you don't treat us equally, we'll shut the college down. I did get a visitation from Paul McNee, or whatever it is, to say it might be legal what we're doing, where stuff like that. And Paul was a good friend and stuff like that. But I tell you what, before we could do anything, the college paid us. And I learned from that. The real question is, how do we connect that power with the class together, even when they put laws in there that say you're not allowed to do that? You're not allowed to march on the street when we tell you not to, or anything like that. We have to connect these things, and we have to do it urgently. Why? The new figures on racist attacks show that racist attacks have gone up by 33%. That is an impact, direct impact between the people at the top of society making racist statements and then that being translated into attacks that take place on the streets. There's not separation. And I think if you look at the Shawcross interview, the attempt to expand Islamophobia into turning us all into police officers for the state, we have to reject this. We have to oppose this. And I also want to give tribute to the Kaba family, because I don't know if people know, when the Queen died, she had a long and happy life, rich and very rich life, right? When they died, they put enormous pressure on that family to call off the demonstration, right? So don't say it's even, because it's not even. People had to mobilize in order to do that. The other question that came up was the question of the Windrush scandal. As they were, people deliberately made sure that different communities were racially attacked through the pension system and through somebody did that. It's not, they pretend it's a mystery. It's an accident. It's like the 68 billion pounds, 58 billion pounds that's gone missing through PPE. And they say they don't know what happened. But miraculously, somebody has a yacht somewhere, right? Or somebody forgot to pay 12 million pounds worth of tax, whatever it is. They pretend there's no connection. I think it's urgent that we connect it because things are not getting better. I'm sorry to say, I think they're getting worse. But I do want to say something. I do think that when you see the strikes that took place, like on Wednesday, you see the power to be able to deal with it, but we have to combine that with real things. And often we're given a tick box exercise about what to do. And I want to argue against something as well. It's going to sound weird, so I shouldn't use those words, but the question of what I call allyship, yeah? People keep saying what we need is allies or whatever it is. It's not allyship we need solidarity. And there's a difference, yeah? Because what happens is, which is psychological, right? It's 200 years since they brought the Anti-Slavery Society together because the institutions in this country were built on slavery and imperialism. It's not an exercise of mental exercise. It was something which was inbuilt into capitalism, defended ideologically, and carried on. If you're going to resist it, we have to have practical things that come out of it. One of the practical things that have got to come out of it, and these are simple things, our children have got to stop being strip searched inside schools. Yes. It seems like a very, we put this demand when we had the conference, and to my personal shame, right, I remember meeting with the various police officers in Hackney and various other things, right? How many police officers have been disciplined for doing something which is openly done? You know how many? No. None. Just in terms of, just another figure, in terms of institutional racism, they said that asylum seekers, there's safe passages in particular schemes that they've put up. The biggest scheme was from Afghanistan. How many people do you think were allowed safely to come to Britain through the Afghanistan scheme? None. How many people have been disciplined for found to use the Windrush, in charge of deliberately using racism? How many people have been disciplined as senior civil servants for doing that? None. And at the end of that, if somebody turns around to you and says you live in a disequal society and you're black and you're treated differently wherever it is, and then they do nothing about it, then you have no other choice but to make sure that you do something about it. When I was 15 years old and the police kept stopping and searching us and beating us up, I burnt down part of our neighbourhood. I'm ashamed to say, yeah? I rioted. I'm not going to lie to you. I'll tell you the honest truth. When those police officers came down there and I recognised who they were, whatever it is, together with my brothers, and lots of people from our college, we blocked the road and we did things because we had no choice. That was 81, 85, whatever it is, yeah? And people turned around and said it was disgraceful that you did that. But suddenly we got a new swimming pool. When you walk down the street, instead of people calling you sunshine, they start calling you sir. What you've anything to do? Hi, I'm your local police officer. I'm not suggesting rioting. I'm suggesting resistance. And I'm suggesting that our resistance is organised and essential. And the reason why I'm saying this is because my son, who's now 30, whatever it is, he was stopped and strip searched in Morning Lane. And I'm a lefty and I tried to get it wherever it is, right? My father, who was in the British Army, was stopped and searched when he first came to this country. My brothers stopped and searched and come to this country. My grandniece or whatever it is, been stopped and searched and whatever it is. That's 4 generations. Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, it's not going to stop. So this campaign that we're doing in Stand Up to Racism, it has to mean something. When we march on the 18th of March, I think we have to have those demands. Please stop strip searching children inside what's happening. The question of Islamophobia in terms of turning people into police officers has got to be taken seriously. And I tell you what, if you can murder somebody on the street, you said they were armed, they weren't armed. You said the police car that they were in was a police car and it was plainclothes police cars. I honestly tell you, if I was surrounded by 3 cars and 4 big white blokes jumped out of the car and said, get out of the car, the idea, you wouldn't, I would use the car in a different way. I'll be honest with you in that way, if you're faced by that. The idea that's not murder and nothing's done about it has got to fundamentally change. So what we're talking about in Stand Up to Racism is something fundamentally radical. Going back to what we did in 1999 is saying we want results. If we don't get results, we come back next year, work out what's the best thing to do, but we want results. We're not going, I'm going to shut up.
I promise you that is the first. He's
Us together is going to change this.
Absolutely, yeah, no, brilliant. Thank you, Weyman. Thank you. Okay, we don't have as much time, but I do think, you know, the contributions made were absolutely superb. So, kind of, you know, but, you know, we do have some time left for discussion and for any questions. We've got about 15 minutes. I know that there might, lots of hands up, and there might be contributions from online. So I'd like to take it alternately, if that's all right. So I'll call up a few people from here. Are there any people with hands up? Okay, all right, okay. Yeah.
Right, I don't want to change the direction of the conversation because it's a lot of microaggressions and heavy trauma we're talking about. But obviously, microaggressions start off. I mean, it's microaggressions lead to micro lead to macro in the sense. So the way I see it, a lot of workplace racism, the common thing that happens is that we rely on HR departments and professional managerial consultancy firms to deal with racism. And this popular book, White Fragility, by Robert DiAngelo, is popular now, and it's talking about sensitivity training programs and all these things. But then I feel like it undercuts the power of the union rep in the workplace. And because he should be the one adjudicating between you, especially if he's black, you should be adjudicating between workers about racism. It shouldn't be the employer that deals with it. I mean, I think it's a big danger from start relying on employers and relying on their HR allies and the management. Management should never deal with racism. So if that means we need to think of new tactics, maybe, and even power and get results as much as possible and think outside of the, get wages and so on. So what do you do? HR management, big problem. I think about it every day. And yeah, if I don't want to change it, it's still trauma everywhere. So thank you.
Thank you. I should say, 2 minutes, please. Okay, we need to be quite strict. Can I also please ask for people to come up to the front? There is a mic here so that people can possibly hear a little bit better.
Can I answer that?
Can we come back at the end,
Yeah.
if that's all right? Because then, is there somebody online?
Yeah,
Can we just take one person online and then I'll call Dean?
of course. I'll bring in Barry, Barry, Barry. Here we go.
3 minutes, please. Can you hear us? Hi.
Is that me?
Yeah, hi, can you hear us?
Oh yeah, I'm Barry. Thanks, because I'm able to attendees. If you could just give me 1 minute, there's been some technical today, but I'm also pleased to attend the session. It's about the workplace and racism and standing up to it. And last year I had a complaint at work where I complained against 2 people in a public sector organisation. It went to HR. They put the thing through mediation. Promised a Bain woman would be the mediator because this is about racism. And I was just doing my job, and like a lot of black managers, used as a scapegoat for the other problems the organisation had at that time. And when they turned up to my meeting, and of course it wasn't a Bain woman, it was a white mediator instead. And the complaint had been made against two white colleagues at work. They very quickly shut that complaint down, and the next day a complaint was brought against me. And then very conveniently, this seemed to be handled by people in HR that were from a Bain background. And I suffered the whole year. I have 4 medical conditions. I was waiting 15 months because of COVID for treatment. I ended up in A&E about 3 times because of a condition called anxiety. And in the end, I submitted a written representation. They put me through a long investigation, and there was nothing they upheld in the complaint against me. But all of that they could have found out right at the start from our manager, who was white. The point I'm making is that the complaint that was about racism, they did barely investigate or put through the right channels. And something that someone who was on a secondment that I had 2 meetings with and had about 3 emails with went to a full investigation. And unfortunately, my Unite officer didn't identify all these issues. And I suffered so much, even on Christmas Day, I stayed at home and didn't go and see my mum. I was that affected by this issue at the end of 2022. And
Are you going to have
to attend this session today? You've spoken about two things which hit the nail on the head. One is divide and rule. Sadly, there's still a divide and rule in the workplace. And two, it's that colonialism. It's that white is right leadership that we are fighting against. And that's a question I'd like to put to the Unite officer there. And just for the record, my uncle A.C. Vaughan came to this country in the 50s and set up the Institute of Relations in King's Cross, not far from where you are today. And these are the points and observations he would make as well. And one thing that he would add is sometimes there's nothing that can stop us being targeted because of our colour.
Thank you, Barry. So if people, when I do call you up, if you're in the room, if you could like come up to the front, perhaps there was a mic here. So I've got Dean.
All right, brothers and sisters. Hi, my name's Dean Ryan. I'm from Hackney Stand Up to Racism. I work with young offenders and gang involved young people. And I have to say, actually, the child queue situation is just the thin end of the wedge. You know, youth offending services up and down the country have carried out what they call disproportionately checks. And actually every step of the justice system, from the streets, from stop and search, right through to the courts. We've done surveys that show that actually black people and mixed race kids get much harsher sentences than their white counterparts for similar crimes, and they're treated much more differently. We have the disgusting situation where black parents have gone to the police and said that criminal drug gangs have been grooming their kids and are trying to force their kids into county lines drug trade. And those kids then get actually treated, instead of being treated as victims of crime, they get treated as the perpetrators of crime, and actually they get put in, they then get sent to Young Offenders Institute where they're getting ensconced in criminality. And actually this, the whole system, the whole drug laws in this country are designed not to stop criminality, but actually to over-police communities. And actually I'll say that we need to get rid of actually the drug laws in this country, because actually drug laws in this country are about harassing people. They're not about bringing justice. And I've been an anti-racist activist for a long time. And I can remember sitting in a room with the family, with the family of Roger Sylvester, and actually crying when I listened to them talk about what had happened to their son. I can remember actually 5 years ago in Hackney, when Rashan Charles, this is a Rashan Charles died, dad talk about his death, his son's death, and actually crying. I can remember actually being on a demonstration on the day of the Queen's funeral and listen to Jefferson talking and actually shedding tears when you talked about how you've had to give up your job as a teacher to campaign for the family. And actually, I think we should pay tribute to them, because, you know, I've seen too many tears. I've seen too many parents crying. It makes me so angry and it makes me so sad to see that. And I don't want to wait for the next murder to happen before we go on another demonstration, right? So what I want to suggest is this, that after the 18th of March, when we have our demonstration, let's use that as a springboard. We talked about actually how do we bring anti-racism from the workplaces onto the street and connect. Let's have a day of action against police racism and brutality. Let's up and down the country go to the police stations. In Hackney, it's Stoke Newton police stations. I'm sure in Liverpool and Cardiff and Manchester and other places, we know what local police stations are harassing black people. So I say it's time to go on the front foot. We have seen, you know, years ago, decades ago, black people were saying that the police was a racist, misogynistic institution, and people didn't believe us. They told us that we had chips on our shoulders. They're not saying that now. We've seen it now. So let's go on the front foot. Let's not be defensive. Let's not wait. Let's organise days of action. Let's actually take the complaints to the police. And actually, I think actually people will fall in behind us, because people are now seeing that it's not about a rotten, you know, a few rotten apples there. The whole barrel needs changing. System change. We need to get rid of the police now.
I was just about to call you, and I was going to say, Jen Christopher, I think you're online. It's not now, but can you get ready so that you can speak straight after the next speaker?
Okay.
Do you want to come and move a little bit this way, because then you can like catch the camera?
My name is Jennifer. I'm the Black Members Officer for Birmingham Branch UNICEF. I'll try to be very brief.
minutes.
I'm quite angry actually, because I belong to different organisations similar to this one in terms of, Black issues, what's going on with our community. And it does seem like it's a very much of a talking shop, just like what Michelle said on the screen earlier. We get very angry when we hear about something. The cases, Stephen Lawrence, George Floyd, Tariq Nichols in America, your son, and many more, hopefully not to come. We get angry, but we don't do much. We do the talking, and we put plans in front, but we never carry these plans out. These plans out. If there's evidence of any change, it's not transparent. We don't know. We don't know the change. We don't see it. I think we need to do more actions more than talking. Now, basically, like I said, condolences to your son in terms of what happened. We're here, stand up to racism, let our voices be heard. Don't be shy, especially in terms of your workplace issues. Let's speak about it. Personally, the accent, I'm from Leeds. I do know about racism. I was born into that particular area in terms of being called names and so forth. I live in a predominantly white area called Lichfield in the Staffordshire area. But I says to myself, I want to make changes. And recently, I've been nominated as a candidate to be the next councillor and the only one in that particular area. So if there's any changes going to be done, then I want to be the person who makes some changes. Thank you. Thank you.
And Christopher, are you ready? Are you okay to speak online?
Hi there. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for some amazing contributions so far. I wanted to talk about the issue around the discrimination in the workplace and the actual traumatic impact that it does have on the mental health and well-being of Black workers. I'm currently dealing with a case whereby the member has experienced a significant amount of racial discrimination, but one of the issues even by my own union, which is the National Education Union, and by many other unions, is that the caseworkers don't often recognise that the issue is occurring. And as being said before, what tends to happen when issues are raised around racial discrimination, that the victim then becomes the perpetrator and they're being disciplined. The question I'm asking now is around the mental health and well-being, because I'm actually dealing with a case currently where a member has been on suicide watch as a version of being sectioned, and yet there's been a total lack of a duty of care around that member. What can be done to support someone like that in an emergency situation? How can an immediate response be done? And how can those around them be held accountable? That's my question. Thank you.
I'm having to be picky about who can speak online, and I think we can literally just call 2 more people from the floor. Okay, right. And then followed by the man in the orange jumper. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Tracy Abrahams, Birmingham Stand Up to Racism, but also PCS, RAP and Midlands, so I'm from Birmingham. So first and foremost, just want to say greetings and solidarity to everybody here, and what a fantastic show of unity and solidarity on Wednesday, all the industrial action that took place. So a couple of things, from a PCS point of view, really, really proud of my union at this moment in time, because we actually took part in action with Care for Calais, where we took the government to court over their racist Rwanda policy. I think it's actually gone to the appeal stage of our NEC members, so just thought I'd get clarification there. But I'm really, really proud because as somebody, I've always felt that the trade union movement, to our shame, we don't do enough about racism, especially anti-Black racism. Sorry, I said it. Anti-Black racism quite often gets swept beneath the carpet. I'm going to put it out there and be blatant about it. So stand up to racism has been really important for me, because one of the things, again, what Weyman has said about being able to understand our power, connect to the class struggle, to what's happening in the workplace, to what's happening in the local community. The union movement is a mass mobilisation of workers that face issues of racism, discrimination in all its forms, and what better way to mobilise people than harnessing that industrial movement within the workplace with community organisations that are at ground zero level, talking to people day in, day out. Because I think sometimes when you're in the workplace, if you're in a position of power, like you might be, I don't know, a high member of the unions, like on the GEC or whatever, you can lose sight of the issues that are affecting people every single day. And Mr. Kaba, my condolences to you and your family, and I thank you so much for sharing your experience with us, because that must be so painful. And honestly, the day I heard of that story, I saw my son on that ground, because my son was a very similar age to yours, and it made me cry. And I can't even appreciate the pain that you're going through. I can't even imagine it. So thank you for that. But I think the answer to dealing with institutional racism, teachers are right, it's about education, decolonising the curriculum, understanding where the wealth of this country is built on. And it's also about changing the system. So part of the Dear John Reed campaign, just wanted to say, I was part of that campaign in Birmingham because there was a racist murder of a 14-year-old boy, and the jury in the Crown Court, there was only one Asian member, the rest of them were white. How can they understand the impact of a racist murder on somebody if there is nobody being reflected in that panel? So on that front, I just say system change is an absolute must. And again, stop the talking, mobilise for March the 18th, use that as a springboard. Let's go forward in solidarity.
Sorry, I meant the man in the orange.
That's even more perfect. Thank you.
You've got a different shade of orange. Sorry. Can I just say, so yes, if you could like follow next, and can I just ask Michelle Simmons, if you're online, if you could just get ready to be the last contribution to the discussion, then that would be great. Thank you.
All right, what I wanted to talk about, being shocked like everyone has been by the horrific thing of these big profile cases that not enough have been about. I also want to talk about the other end of things and some of the things that people have talked about little discriminations in the workplace. Because I'm in a UCU, so a university in Brighton, and no one at the university has ever used abusive language or anything like that directly towards me. But anyone from a black background or any non-white background in this sort of situation will know that if you're an academic or anything trying to get by in that, you do not get the same kind of promotions. You find that the things that you're putting forward, like we talk about redoing the curriculum, you try and suggest things to redo the curriculum and they're less likely to be accepted. This kind of situation, I think it makes things very difficult because you have to look at things statistically. And as someone was saying from the platform, it's getting harder and harder to look at things statistically. You have to say that statistically, you're not going to get promoted as much. You're not going to have ideas put forward as much. And I think this does come down to who deals with things. And I really want to support the people who've been saying we need to look to the trade unions, and the unions actually not just offering basic things saying we support working with HR or other things like that. We need the trade unions to be saying we will actively support people who are demanding change at the base of society. And one thing that I think that the UCU has shown over the past couple of weeks with other unions is that actually when people get together, when they're actually coming on strike and demanding things like demanding better pay and conditions, that's also when they start saying we're demanding better conditions for black workers and for other people like that. It may seem, well, it is little compared to the kind of things that some of the people on the platform have had to speak about. I think it's important in building a change in the way that our society is organised.
Thank you. Speak, and then if the next two people are really quick, I might allow you, although the person who wants to speak has just left the room, but Michelle, are you okay to speak?
Hi, hello everybody, it's just me again.
You have about 2 minutes, if that's okay.
Okay, 2 minutes is absolutely fine.
Brilliant.
I would just first of all like to say thank you very much for actually inviting me. It's Margaret Greer who actually invited me to this Stand Up to Racism. And in the Caribbean, we have a saying that one hand can't clap. And there are some people within the unions who have been fighting, ferociously for us as Black people. And Margaret Greer is one of them. And she put her head above the parapet on so many different occasions across the board. And, there has been backlash There has been backlash because we would be foolish to say that that doesn't happen. So you have to be really brave and to be able to stand on the right side of history. So that's one thing. I want to say my condolences to those families. And it kind of showed my age because Roger Sylvester, the uprisings of 1985 within Tottenham, you know, this is all part and parcel of my history and who I am. And that is why I will stand firmly and unshakable in shaking the foundations of racism and institutional racism in the workplace. My question to the conference is, how are we going to mobilize and make people more brave to be able to not be the lone ranger in the room and to clap with them to ensure that we eradicate this cancer within institutional racism that has adverse effects on people's lives? So this is my question, is how are we? We have to come up. So this is not just a talking shop and we're not just doing it emotionally. But we need more people like Margaret Gray that's really willing to just push to the end. But when you do it, people become afraid. Other people become afraid. I've really experienced it when I'm even trying to help someone. They say, oh, no, Michelle, I'll just go and find another job elsewhere. And so what you do is you never address the issue. So I'm pleading with the conference today to actually look at how we formulate an action plan. I love the thing with going on the front foot, but you know, we also have to have that drip effect that's going to facilitate real change. And it's going to be put our stake in the ground and say, so far and no more. There's going to be no more abuse of us. So that's my question to conference today.
Thank you, Michelle. You have 1 minute. Sorry, just.
I don't know if I can do this 1 minute, maybe 1 minute and a half minute, but anyway.
Oh, I don't know, counting.
All right, I'm David. I'm here as a delegate.
Delegate
from Islington NEU, also involved in the Jewish Socialist Group. Wanted to describe very, very briefly something that happened to me when I was 21. That was a little while ago, 1979. I was working in a warehouse for about 6 or 7 weeks. We're round the corner to where the National Front had their headquarters. Somebody I was paired with, a few years younger than me, 16, 17 years old. We're working together a lot, seems a very nice guy. We go off to the chip shop at lunchtime and I find out he's been going on National Front marches. I didn't react directly at the time, but basically what I did, I had conversations with him every day. And about 5 or 6 weeks later, I'm wondering, am I getting anywhere with this? And he turns around to me one day, he started the conversation, and he says, I'm not going on them marches anymore. And, you know, it had got through. And I suppose my question is, I mean, I absolutely endorse everything that's said about the fight, the massive agenda about institutional racism, but it's also a question about individual prejudices and how you open conversations with people. And I know that would be much more difficult if I was black, in that situation, but the question of how, I think that has to be part of the equation, yeah, and thinking about what union strategy is to enable that to happen, as well as all the challenge to institutional racism. Okay.
Yeah, come up quickly. Right, very, very last person.
Okay.
You've got less than a minute.
Got less than a minute. I just thought I'd jump in at this point. Solidarity with everybody who's been on strike, and my condolences with all the families. I call myself Grenfell impacted, and I think I want to remind the room that actually institutional racism was at the heart of what happened at Grenfell. Everything that's been discussed in the media, the inquiry, people treat Grenfell as if it was a technical issue. Yes, of course it was. But actually, why did that come about? Because the residents were ignored. Residents who were mainly from a Muslim background. Residents who were people of color. And we challenged that in the inquiry. Imran Khan mentioned it. Leslie Thomas called it the elephant in the room, but we didn't have any success. But I think also important to remind people that actually housing is one area where Black people face endless discrimination. We remember Ayub, the 2-year-old dying in mold. And I think it's really important that we keep fighting around issues of fire safety, decent homes for Black people, for all working class people. And also to actually remember that in the midst of a cost of living crisis, who is going to be impacted by rent increases? It's going to be working class people and people of colour, and that's why Homes for All, who I'm also representing, is having a demonstration on Saturday the 11th, demanding a rent freeze and a service charge freeze and to stop evictions, because that is what we're going to see coming up. So please give us your support. We've got a short after.
It's a brilliant discussion, which obviously raises lots and lots of issues, actually. I'm going to get our panel to come back to speak really briefly. I think I'll probably just leave it to the people who are actually in the room to come back, if that's all right, if you are still online. And literally, you have a minute to come back on all the issues raised. So, Juliana, I'm going to do the same order that you started off with. Okay, right, so Juliana.
Okay, so a number of issues that was raised. I would say one of the sisters on the line said, what do we need to do? I think we need to educate our people. We need to organize as well. Okay, so we can't just say one thing and do the opposite. We need to organize, we need to make connections with other groups and so on. We need to work with other unions and see what they're doing. We need to work with the Trade Union Congress, and especially with the paper that they brought out about working, the system they put into place to deal with racism and so on. We need to get the unions to work at the grassroots level, and also to provide support for Black workers, because it's not easy to raise issues of racism without you being the target of the ridicule. I have been there myself. I know what everybody's talking about. I know what my colleagues are going through. I have a colleague at the present time who's going through a tremendous time, you know, and really with a lot of issues to do with racism, and also having to tackle with our institutions. So we need to really work together with all the other groups who are discriminated against. We need to work with the women, we need to work with the disabled group, we need to work with the migrant workers and so on, and on issues of pay and low status in the workplace. We need to really look at that whole policies about the long COVID in the workplace, because that also is affecting a lot of Black workers in a big way. And as unions, we need to look at the whole way in which we monitor, review, recruit, and retain Black members in the workplace and so on. And also look at the employment practices of our employers and how they, you know, and put pressure on them to ensure that the underrepresentation of Black workers is dealt with in a very meaningful way, in an intersectional way as well. We need to get rid of this, the pay gap, and I know that you have issue with, but if we look at it from the connected with all the other struggles that's going on, then obviously that would happen. We need to look at the whole issue of 0-hour contracts and promoting decent work for all workers. We also need to acknowledge the experience, the lived experience of Black workers, and not sweep their issues under the carpet. We really need to listen to what they bring to bear into our workplaces. We need to look at the HR practices, especially some of the policies that's been in place. Some of them are so old, they're not fit for purpose. And we need to really look at those policies. And in most cases, what you tend to find is that when there's issues of disciplinary and all the other grievances and so on, all these policies are thrown out of the window when it's to do with a Black worker. And so, you know, our workplace really need to address that all of these kind of issues. And we also need to establish a meaningful leadership program for Black workers in the workplace, especially in line with the one that was set up by TUC. And there has to be an ongoing recognition of what Black workers have contributed to the unions. Because sometimes we talk about the unions, we talk about as if to say it's another body and we're another body. But the unions is made up of us. And we are the ones who have to really push for things to change. And we need to acknowledge what the contributions all the other Black unions have done historically. We did something recently, a webinar recently in UCU, where we had people like Wealth and all the other Black trade unionists who have gone on before, had come and talked about their experiences. And I have to say that a lot of the experiences have not really changed a great deal. But if we don't participate, then that's a problem. And I think one of the biggest things that's happened in the Black community I find is a big problem for us is that we got rid of a lot of the Black community centers where a lot of our young Black people used to go into and get support for all manner of things, be it education, be it support from racism, all kind of things. All of these things have gone out of the window. And as a result of that, we don't have a base for a lot of our young people to come to and become educated in a lot of the community politics in order to be able to have the confidence to participate in a much more bigger politics, as it were. Okay, so that's something that we need to go back and reestablish and work on in order to move forward. And of course, we need to make sure that the unions as well increase material support for the low-paid workers in our workplaces. Thank you very much.
Really, really interesting. The problem is that everybody else is in the 1 minute.
Okay, so on equal pay for Black workers, just transfer £300 billion to the Black community. It's that simple. If you don't do that, introduce or do a deal, just say you can't afford that, have 100 billion. Yeah. Or introduce equal pay questionnaires and I'll spend the next 20 years getting the money incrementally, and the equal pay gap will just remain as it is. In terms of HR and unions, I mean, if you're being absolutely honest, the unions have not done enough to fight racism in the workplace. That's a good fact. I can prove that statistically. In 2003, I personally did more race cases than all the unions in the UK put together. I did that on a budget of £350,000. How is that possible? I did more race cases and Commission for Racial Equality. They had a £14 million budget. Yet I brought £1 million of compensation to Black workers for 350,000. Yeah, the unions have got a lot of money. I've sued unions for not taking race cases because they do it democratically. One Black worker kicking off, 5 white workers say he's making it up. They support the 5 because it's a democratic case. Everyone knows that, from Bill Morris, the General Secretary I've spoken to about, right down shop steward level. There's a lot of racism. Unions do a lot of good as well. But the other big truth no one wants to say is the unions have very little power in the workplace. 99% of race grievances, whether you're run by HR, whether you're run by independent HR, whether you've got a union rep with you, you lose. Why do 99% of race grievances lose? It's because the company, be it the police, be it anyone, they can't admit to the racism in the internal process because you get sued externally, you can't defend it. So the whole system's designed for the employer to reject. 99% of grievances are lost in any situation, in any organisation. 99% of victims then don't sue because the Equality Act doesn't work. The solution is an anti-racism commission. Okay, every act of racism in the police, every act of racism in any employer in the UK goes to an anti-racism commission. They come in, they have full powers to just get in there and get the stuff done. They have no commitment to support the employer, just a commitment to justice. You kill it immediately. Punitive damage is absolutely important. In the States, Smith, Klein, Beecham was sued because they made hundreds of millions of pounds about marketing a drug that literally killed people. Yeah, the whistleblower got $96 million. And the case was run by the Department of Justice. She didn't have to do anything. She wasn't an individual fighting a massive corporation. A massive corporation fought a massive corporation. That same case, that same lady been employed in the UK on the same salary, pointing out the same problem, killing human beings in this country, she would have got £200,000. That's the difference. And she wouldn't have run the case. She wouldn't have whistleblown. It's exactly the same on racism, why people don't do it. I've got to say very quickly, if I'm given permission, Betty Mujinga died Victoria Station. White man assaulted her. What people don't know is she complained of racism before she was assaulted. She shouldn't have been on the platform that day because she was rostered to work inside. Her boss, who she complained of racism, was never investigated. There was no process at all. It was swept onto the carpet. She was sent outside when the boss knew she had a health condition, which would made her more at risk of getting COVID. She says the man shouted at her for no apparent reason, big white guy, we know he's establishment connected. He used the Queen's own lawyer, the lawyer the Queen used on the Princess Diana inquiry, the Queen herself chose as his legal representative. Who has access to that type of person? And by the way, that's the head lawyer on the Brexit investigation now. So think about how that's going to filter through on racism in Brexit. Okay? It can't be the Equality and Human Rights Commission because they're owned and controlled by the government now. It's not an independent body. It has to be an anti-racist commission. 6 months before the last election, the Equality and Human Rights Commission were approached with 3 racism investigations. Number 1, Windrush, quite a big thing. They said, we're not doing anything. Number 2, anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. They said, yep, we want to do that one. Number 3, Islamophobia in the Conservative Party. We're not doing anything on that. Okay? So Corbyn went into that election being accused of being a racist, yeah, on anti-Semitism. If Windrush had been picked up then, Windrush would have reported just before the last election. Amber Rudd would have had to resign. The Home Secretary would have had to go. The government would have had to admit to being part and parcel of an institutionally racist policy. At the point of the election, they would have lost all that narrative. But the Equality and Human Rights Commission didn't do it. Okay, it was a political decision. 2 more very quick things. Jeremy Clarkson in the Sun newspaper, attack on Meghan Markle. We're doing a group action against the Sun and Jeremy Clarkson. Keep an eye on that. It's a crowdfunding thing, yeah? We're going to try and change the law so black people in the country, where they're harassed generally by racist papers, racist articles, they can fight back, they can sue, because that could change things as well. And last point.
Because other people.
We need a litigation fund, okay? Tipping points. You've all heard of Me Too, yeah? Started in America. They raised $20 million for a litigation fund. The stats are exactly the same in America as they are here. 30% of women under 30 will be sexually harassed in the workplace. Absolute fact in this country, in America. Percentage of women who claim in America, 6%. After Me Too, how many women now exercise their rights in America? Have a guess. 10%. In the UK, it's 1%. After Me Too, what's the level of people who sue for sexual harassment in the UK? Post Me Too, 1%. It hasn't changed. And we raised £2 million. And what do we do with our £2 million? Do we put it into litigation? No, it's dedicated to counselling. Yeah, so the perpetrator never gets challenged. Right? So all you have to say from this is 99% of racist acts and sexual harassment acts in a workplace never get challenged. The perpetrator never gets dismissed. That's why nothing changed. The police are not fit to police themselves, okay? 100%. I've done more race cases than the Metropolitan Police than any lawyer in the country. I've seen every dirty trick, at every single level, okay? They are absolutely unfit to police themselves. That power needs to go to that same anti-racism commission, or else you'll have no change in the Met. Absolutely no change in the Met.
Mr. Kaba, do you want to say a few words?
Yes, what I can say that we need one nation and one justice. The day they will start punish the police, the rest of them, they would start thinking twice. And then this can stop. And all as we are here together, in my country, they say that people in the same boat, they got the same desire. Everyone want to go to the shore. What do we want? Justice. What do we want? One justice for one nation. Thank you.
I'm going to be short by saying that we have to relearn our tradition, right? Yeah. And I mean that in the sense that the National Front in this country did not decide to dissolve itself. We smashed it to pieces by mass activities of trade unions and actually stopping them on the street. The British National Party did not disappear itself, yeah? We destroyed it by politically organising mass movements and actually prepared to take action, including strike action, to exclude them from our unions and from our workplace. The EDL, we destroyed the EDL with the same method of organisation and being able to do that. We did it culturally, we did it in all those things. Black and white unity was a centre to being able to do that, but in one simple thing, it was an offensive thing. It was, look, far too much of the movement is dedicated to getting OBEs, right? And the right OBE is the abolishment of the British Empire, not the order of it. Right? That means it, and also that means what we mean redistributing the money that goes to the police to what Dean said, to health workers, to teachers, to whatever it is. And I'll put it two ways, the two methods of this. Firstly, the strikes that we're putting forward have to win. Because part of the reason why people haven't got confidence is because the people at the top of our society are too confident and the people at the bottom are not confident enough. We want to smash every bit of confidence that they've got. That's why a strike that takes place now and you see people win, we need that. But we also need to strike against racism, right? And the final thing I want to say is that we need organisation. Stop to Racism is too small, to be honest, right? That's the honest truth of it. It's far too small and it's certainly underfunded. Well, we tried to fund the Friends and Families demonstration for the stage. The police told us you'll never get a stage, yeah? Never do it. We ran round to all our members and paid for the stage. But we need, and we want to do that everywhere. We want organisation everywhere. We want to support people everywhere, but we need to have a bigger stand up to racism. And I think the key to it is we need leadership in that way of organising so that people are supported at work and at the same time they're supported on the street. But also the reason why I'm standing here is because when the National Front tried to march inside my school, there was a man called Blair Peach. He was murdered by the police. I didn't stand alone. There was a tradition of teachers and other people saying, yeah, we're going to train you to, when you threw bricks at the police, you didn't get caned or detention, right? The teacher said, that might not always work, Weyman, but you do need to have a strategy of overcoming them, right? And I think we need to train our new generation to do that. And now's the time to do it. Now's the time when people see that the government is lying about health service, about all those things, to combine that effort into having a bigger organisation. I know I've already got that, as I've exceeded the amount of members. The solution is a bigger stand up to racism and victories of our class to break through the people that instituted slavery, that brought together imperialism and organising in order to that, to stop it from being taught into action in order to do that. Everybody in this room has fought. Let's get more people involved in our struggle for us to be able to win.
And you have 1 minute to get across because you're speaking next as well, by the way. There is going to be a campaign statement being launched by Stand Up to Racism, so please look out for that. 24th of February, 9th of March, there's going to be a Twitter storm to build for March the 18th, so please get involved in that. We are supporting and promoting Care for Calais and the PCS union policy, obviously, about safe passages, and obviously the Rwanda scheme. We're going to be developing blocks for the demonstrations, and we're going to be organising an educational trip to Auschwitz. So again, please do look out for that, and please be part of organising and supporting a further conference for the Black child. As we had last summer, it'd be really important to kind of like continue that campaign as well. You have literally 2 minutes to get across to the plenary. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to our speakers. And really, really excellent discussion.